Hi guitarlings, I'm Gray and this is Hub Guitar. If you've ever studied piano, you've probably heard of this tune, but in case you haven't, this is Erik Satie's Gymnopedie number 1. Let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to say about this piece is that this is a very, very slow and relaxed and flowing piece. Not only is it unnecessary to play this tune fast, but if you attempt to take it at a tempo that's above the range that it was meant for, you'll actually pretty much ruin it. If you need to, turn on a metronome just to get a sense of the tempo that you want. Listen to piano players perform this piece and make sure that you're not rushing the tempo. Most players are aware that it's difficult to play fast, but a lot of players don't realize that it's equally difficult to play slow. Jumping into the beginning, we're going to oscillate between these two very slow major 7th chords. Now back in the late 1800s, the major 7th chord was probably not a common harmony, so it would have sounded interesting and colorful. This is A major 7, so we've got an A in the bass, and then we're doing C sharp, E, G sharp on strings 3, 2, and 1. Then we go to E major 7. To get that, you can bar your index finger across the 4th fret of strings 1, 2, and 3. So that's going to repeat. Remember, don't rush it. And then the melody's going to start. So we're going to use our pinky to grab the 7th fret note of the 1st string. And we're going to pause on this A here briefly before we go back to the lower part of the E major 7. So altogether we've got this. So I want you to take note of what the melody is doing in this piece. This is originally written for piano, and we all know piano players have a lot of fingers, right? So sometimes the melody will actually dip underneath the chords and kind of get tucked inside of the chords. Normally it's going to be on top, then it's going to kind of walk underneath and do all kinds of cool things. And that's going to happen here too. So on your guitar, we don't have that happen so much. So pay special attention, for example, in the next measure. This is the last note of the melody. You can hear pretty clearly that the melody resolves to be here, even though there's a couple little notes that go on top of it. So once you've played that B, don't interrupt it, don't touch that 3rd string, and play those 2 harmony notes on top. But also, the way you phrase it, you don't want these 2 upper notes to stomp out the melody. You want that melody note to be heard as the primary note in that measure. So let's start a couple measures back. Notice that I kept that accompaniment part pretty light on that last note. I didn't let the volume of those notes exceed that of the melody. Going to the next measure, we continue this motif of these 2 chords going back and forth. Again, don't rush it. And now the melody is coming back. Now you may see a forte, and you may see a crescendo indicating that the general volume and energy level is raising a little bit right up to about here before it drops back down. So for the next measure, we're going to bar across the 4th fret. Notice that if you try to play this thing too fast, the chord shifts and the bar shifts are going to leave you with awkward gaps and silences, whereas if you play it nice and slow, those little pauses and breaks sound a little bit more appropriate. So really important to observe the right tempo. So we're barring across the 4th fret for these. Nothing too difficult. Pluck these outer 2 notes and the inner 2 notes. And then we've got this minor chord, again outer 2 and inner 3. So now we're going down to the 2nd fret, barring across there. Notice there's a pianissimo here, so the overall volume and energy level has dropped quite a bit. Now we've got this minor 7 chord here. Let's talk about this chord. You may not have encountered this chord yet in your guitar playing. In fact, you might have played guitar every day for 100 years and maybe never stumbled across this one, and that is okay. What you should do with a chord like this that maybe feels a little bit awkward at first is do what I call chord push-ups. So that's when you fret all of the individual notes of the chord, play it out, and then lift your hand up, straighten that out, and come back and do it again. Lift up, come back down. Don't rush this. Just do it at a nice, even pace. You'll find that you get faster and faster at forming that chord shape. And in the course of maybe 5 or 10 minutes, you can make really real and noticeable and tangible progress on a single chord that you might not have made just by playing the song up and down a bunch of times, because it only shows up a couple times in the song. Like now, since I've been narrating this, I've probably played this chord 20 or 30 times. That's way more than it shows up in the song. So that's how you can make one day's practice have a visible output. Take one small piece of what you're doing and really work on it and make it better today. Let's go back a few measures and hear that all together. So in the previous measure, we had a chord was from the major key, and suddenly we've slipped almost into into an E minor sound. All of a sudden, it's a very abrupt change, and that's hearkening what's about to happen in the next section. Onwards to the B section, we've got a series of increasingly dark and melancholy ideas coming out, and these might sound a little bit avant-garde or a little bit weird, especially while you're practicing this and it's not up to tempo. The key is to go really slowly, maybe use a metronome, and make sure that you're getting the timing and tempo consistent. And slowly, the B section will start to take shape when you can play everything with a consistent time feel. We're going to bar again across the 2nd fret. Now we're going to reach our pinky up to the 7th fret of the 2nd string to get that melody note, and then come back down to this A major chord. Play the outer 2 strings as we slide down to 4 and 2, and then use the index finger to also grab the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. Now for this chord, and now I'm in measure 25. For this chord, I like to bar across the 4th fret to grab those 2 4th fret notes, and then use my 2nd finger to get the 5th fret note on the 5th string. Go to this harmony, so we've got the 2nd finger now on the 5th fret of the 5th string, pinky finger on the 6th fret of the 4th string, and index finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. Now for this part, it's a little bit tricky because you have to make sure that you're leading in with the right finger. So you want to put probably your middle finger on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, play that with the open string, and then move that right up to the 8th fret as you come in place for this chord shape here. And then you can use your pinky for the next melody. So we've got this. We've got to quickly come down for a bar here on the 7th fret, but we've got to have a partial bar because we need the open E string, so don't touch that with the index finger. You have a split second to grab the next couple of notes, which are 9, 9, and 7. So it's like this. So you really have to dive in and dig deep to that chord to get all of those notes to ring cleanly and clearly. Then we get a little open string that lets us have a second, at least, that we can use to teleport down to the 2nd position. When we're in the 2nd position, we're going to do a partial bar across the 2nd fret with our index finger, and we're going to play the outer 2 strings. And that gives us just another split second to get down to this shape. So I've got my ring finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string and my pinky finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Not a lot of time to get into that shape either. But because we've got the bar in place here, we can just lift up the pinky for the next melody note, and then go back to some open strings. Then we've got the outer 2, some inner strings here, open E string, and then we've got to make this fairly big stretch here. This is now on measure 32. So what I suggest you do is think about the middle finger and ring finger on the 4th fret of the 5th and 4th strings as being your anchor point, because then the index finger needs to reach the 2nd fret of the 6th string, and the pinky finger needs to reach the 5th fret of the 1st string. I find rather than putting one of those far end anchors in place first, you want to kind of think about where the middle goes first, and then you just stretch out from there. So I've got this. Now you'll see the words to coda, but don't worry about that yet because we haven't actually reached the repeat that calls for us to pay attention to that, so just ignore that for now. It'll come in place next time we pass by this measure. Next measure has a full 4th fret bar. Then we've got this interesting little thing, 2nd fret, this E chord, 2nd fret. Now we're going to go to the 4th fret of the 2nd string. I would say probably use your middle finger, that way you can slide that up 1 more fret and then getting ready for this unusual chord here. This is your 3rd finger on the 5th string's 6th fret, and then I'm barring across the 4th fret of strings 4 and 3, and actually effectively all of them, but I really just need 4 and 3. And then I've got my middle finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string, and then my pinky can grab the next melody note. Then we're going to go down to the 4th fret again, and then to this chord. This is just 1, 1, open, open, and then 2nd fret of the high E string, and then we've got this weird little bass, and these are all quarter notes, so the rhythm should be da, 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 pretty nice and even. 2nd fret of the 6th string, 4th fret of the 5th string, and then jump to that chord. This is the chord we practiced chord push-ups on before, and there was a reason for that, because now we've got to get it in place pretty fast or it's not going to sound right. And then we finish that up with a couple more chords, finally resolving back to the E chord. So that first chord is index finger on the 10th fret of the 1st string, and you can use your pinky finger on the 12th fret of the 2nd string, and your middle finger on the 11th fret of the 3rd string, and combine that shape with the open A string. And then to go to the E chord, you could think about what your kind of open F major shape looks like, right? 1, 1, 2. We're going to go to 12, 12, and 13. I like to do a bar there, and then just combine that with the open E string. Now on your music, you should see the instructions da capo al coda. So what da capo means is, it means return to the beginning of the music. And the latter half of that phrase, al coda, means that this time, as we play through, because we're repeating the whole entire thing, this time we're going to respect the repeat instructions, basically the instruction to go to the coda. So whereas the first time we played all the way from measure 1 to measure 38, this time we're going to go to measure 1, and we're going to stop after playing measure 32 and skip straight to the coda, which begins at measure 39. Let's talk about the coda. It starts off right away with this very dissonant and weird minor 9th interval. Now, if you go to music school, one of the things you'll learn is basically don't ever use this interval because it's so ugly no one ever wants to hear it. But the composer, knowing full well how harsh this interval sounded, decided to put it here. And then we go to the open 2 strings. Now the next measure, I recommend you get ready by pushing down on the 2nd frets of the 6th and 5th strings with your index and middle finger, and then maybe using your 3rd finger to get to the 2nd fret of the 2nd string. Then you can play the first 2 notes, and all you've got to do is add 1 note on top. Maybe you can use your pinky to add that note onto the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And then if you do use your pinky, you could kind of roll your pinky back to the 3rd fret of the 1st string. We're going to play the 2nd fret of the outer 2 strings here, and then go right up to this chord shape. This might be another one that you've got to practice. And then we've got to reach for that 7th fret melody note, and go back to the outer 2. And then this 2 and 3. And we've again got this kind of bass going up to this minor chord. And now we're going to resolve the tune with a B minor and an E minor. So for the B minor, you can just bar right across the 7th fret and add a D on top with your pinky. And for the E minor, you just got to bar across the first 3 strings on the 12th fret. And you can just let that sink in because now you're done. You might choose to make some big fancy E minor chord out of harmonics or do something weird, or if you know a more dramatic kind of E minor roll or lick or chord that you like to do there, you can throw that in at the end. Alright then, well that's it for this tune. Thanks for watching.